Good evening, women. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our keynote entertainer to sort of kick it up a notch and get us started at this conference. Madame Gandhi, aka Kiran, is a musician and activist. Having gained recognition as the former drummer for artist M.I.A. and as a viral free-bleeding runner at the 2015 London Marathon, Madame Gandhi now produces music that elevates and celebrates the female voice. Kiran grew up between New York City and Bombay, India, playing drums and attending the Chopin School. A sought-after speaker for all audiences, her storytelling and performances hit on themes of empowerment, gender equality, and wellness. As an influencer, she has partnered with brands like Adidas and the North Face, and is a strong supporter of the Future is Female slogan, which is all about arriving at a time when femininity is as desirable as masculinity. Please welcome Madame Gandhi.
Good evening, ETFO. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? My name is Kiran. I perform as Madame Gandhi, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I just flew in this morning from Los Angeles, and I wanted to ask who in the audience is here for their first time, for their first conference. Raise their hand. It's my first conference as well, and I wanted to share with you all that today is my last day in my 20s. Today is my last day in my 20s. So at midnight tonight, I turned 30. And so when the opportunity was given to me to come and spend today with you, I felt deeply grateful and found it very fitting to reflect on all the educators in my life and all the enormous work that you're doing. And before we get started and I get to spend this sort of 45 minutes to an hour with you and we kind of settle into the night, you're doing so well. Good job. It's a lot of moving parts. I wanted to say to you, those kids really love you. Those kids really love you so much. All the work that you're doing. They have little crushes on you, and they really want to show you their painting and have you validate it. And you're trying to do 45 things at once. But you're shaping that first sort of decade of their lives, and it's so powerful. But moreover, what I wanted to say, what I was reflecting on as I was preparing my remarks for this evening, was that, as someone who's a musician and traveling to speak, one thing that I don't get to do very often is hang out with 12-year-olds and be with 6-year-olds. And there's something so cool that you all get to be with them every single day, because kids don't have a perception of constraint. They don't know about the way that the world is supposed to work. They're free, they're open, they're silly, they're goofy, they're ridiculous. And so I just wanted to reflect that back to you, that the freedom of children is something that is constantly inspiring me. And I feel very grateful that you all are here doing your work. So this evening, what I was thinking of doing is opening up with a song. I wrote this song last year. It's called Top Knot Turn Up. It's about putting your hair up in a bun and getting some work done. Okay, that's my turn up song, where there's I'm going for a run, or I'm doing some work, or I'm dealing with the patriarchy. Okay, so that's the song that I'd like to start off with this evening. And then I'm going to take about half an hour or so to share a couple of stories in my journey that have shaped and allowed me to arrive at my gender politics, my understanding of gender liberation today. And then I'd like to close kind of with a couple songs, but also opening it up to each of you in case there are any questions or anything that you'd like to share with each other. Does that sound cool? Yeah, cool. Awesome. Awesome. Will you hook it up louder in the monitor for me? Thank you. This is is a song about getting the work done. Hair up in a bun, that's the most fun. Hearing myself think when I go for a run. Or maybe I'm practicing the drums. Or maybe I'm writing in the sun. The takeaway point is I'm talking to no one. Protecting my vibes that are wholesome. Trying my best to solve actual problems. If you want to hang with me, then you have to roll up your sleeves and work with me. This ain't no time to come flirt with me. Pipe buns and pills are destroying the earth. You see, I cannot stand all the constant misogyny. Tie my hair back, ain't nothing stopping me. Top knot, turn up. It's a top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. About getting the work done. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. It's a top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, ayy. How y'all doing, Toronto? Make some noise. That's right, top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. About getting the work done. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. It's a top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, ayy. So tie up and tie up and tie up your hair. Throw back those curls. Tie up and tie up and tie up your hair. Throw back those curls, Throw back those curls. Throw back and throw back and Braka. Ticka ticka toom cha. Notifications so I have more time. No bubbles to trouble my clear state of mind. One thing to know, I'm not here to please. Hair tied back, I do it properly. My time is not your property when I'm productive like my ovaries. Hey, give a grown girl room to breathe. Basic rights and our liberty. Free from insecurity that the world's projecting onto me. Please do not trouble me when I am focused. The future is female, you already know this. I'm fighting against the corruption. I'll throw this shirt up in my top knot since when I first wrote this. It's a top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. About getting the work done. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. It's a top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up. How y'all feeling, ETFO? Top knot, turn up. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. About getting the work done. Top knot, turn up, turn up, turn up. It's a top knot, turn up. We making some noise on a Wednesday night. I grew up in New York City, not too far from here. And I grew up to two fairly traditional Indian parents. And I loved the drums. I started playing the drums when I was young. And I loved the drums because I think inherently I knew it was radical. I knew it wasn't a thing that the girls were playing the drums, so it made me love it even more. And I wasn't the most disciplined kid, so I also kind of knew there's no notes or melodies in the drums. So if you hit this one versus that one, it kind of slides, you know? So I loved it. And I remember my father, of all people, who was very academic focused, he was very encouraging of my drumming. You know, he was very encouraging. Later, when I got into a good school, I remember I realized, you know, I was like, oh, he thought it would be a good diversity check mark. You know, Indian girl playing the drums, you can get into any university. This is going to be great. You know, so he was very encouraging. But as a kid, you know, I was very dialed in to kind of noticing gender inequality, especially in the media, and especially in the sort of young things that were being given to us as kids. I would watch Aladdin, and I would think, listen, Jasmine is the princess. She has everything going for her, and yet Aladdin has all the freedom. It just doesn't even add up, you know? I would look at the Power Rangers and say, why is it that it's always the guy who has to lead the group and never the women in the group? When the Spice Girls came along, my world was M.I.A. I said, this is the truth. Finally, this is the truth. And I used to love hip-hop, and I used to love listening to so much of that stuff. because it taught me about stories and about things that were happening in other parts of my reality. Yet sometimes when I would watch the screen, I would think, my goodness, I don't want to have to turn up to the sound of my own oppression, you know? I didn't think that as an 8-year-old, but I'm, explaining now as a almost 30-year-old. I ended up getting into Georgetown, where I studied women's studies, because it had been a passion of mine. How do I take the feelings that I have when I see this injustice, but add words to it, of other folks who have figured out many of these problems ahead of time? And as I worked my way through college, I remember thinking, it would be so powerful if I can go into the music industry, but as someone who's kind of shaking things up from the inside out. What if I could be responsible for signing acts that were feministy just in the way the Spice Girls had influenced me as a young person? And it really is so powerful because as young people, I do think the biggest two things that influence them are their educators, their community, and the media. And so you're here in that work doing the education side, and for me it was always, how do I shape music and pop culture? I got my first job out of school at Interscope Records. It's a record label in Los Angeles. That's when I first moved out. I was working with artists whom I loved. I was working with Lady Gaga. I was working with Lana Del Rey, with Kendrick Lamar. It was really inspiring as a young person. And I had a great female boss. She was encouraging me even to apply to grad school to maybe continue my work and get a business degree so I could advance in the music industry. But the truth is that I was behind a desk for 2 years. I was behind a desk for 2 years. And it's interesting because I wanted to work in music, but I wanted to be playing the music. And I remember kind of seeing my friends who would play sax for Justin Bieber, and kind of feeling jealous. Like, I want to play the drums for someone. And in particular, because I love Justin Bieber, so that's like a particular situation. I love him. He's a Pisces like me. I really adore him. And he's Canadian. Wins. So many wins. And I remember thinking, wow, I have a homie who's playing the guitar for Katy Perry. Like, I wish I was playing the drums for somebody. I do. And jealousy is such an interesting emotion. It really is an interesting emotion because, you see, it can be a dark emotion. It can be used to kind of create this toxicity inside of us, not content with our lives, not joyful, throwing shade at somebody else. But it can be a very productive emotion if you say, wow, this jealousy is actually showing me exactly what it is that I want for my own life. And I remember thinking a bit like, wow, I'm not in that world of touring and of musicians in LA. I don't even know the connections. I don't even know how I would do that. I don't even know how to compete on that level. And in that moment, M.I.A. walks by my desk at Interscope. Any M.I.A. fans in the room, make some noise. For those who are not hip to her music, Paper Planes was the biggest one a couple years ago. But she's a very, very brilliant Sri Lankan British artist who radicalized, in my opinion, pop and electronic music today. She walks by my desk, and I remember begging my boss, can I go to the meeting? Please, can I go to the meeting? And she's like, no, you're a baby. You're not going anywhere. Bottom of the totem pole, no. I said, please, it's a digital marketing meeting. I'm in digital. I won't say anything. Please, can I come? She said, okay, fine, you can come. So we go to the meeting, and Maya and I had this kind of like brown girl moment, because there's a lot of white folks in the room, label folks. And she and I have a brown girl moment. And then she left the meeting. She had finished the meeting. And I had this moment of bravery. And I said, M.I.A.'s tour and her show is great, but she could really use a drummer. She could really use a drummer. Maybe somebody brown, Indian. Maybe somebody young, somebody who knows how to play the parts, And there was a woman in the room named Diana Cass who had worked on M.I.A.'s team, and she said, listen, I'll take you seriously. Send me a video. Put something together for me. And in that moment, I said, I want to think of myself as someone who can actually contribute to Maya's show, not something that I'm taking. What can I contribute? What can I really bring that she would see and say, hey, this is valuable. This is great. I put together a video, and we sent it along to her. She hit back immediately and responded, and she said, this is great. This video is awesome. We're not thinking about the tour just yet, but I'll hit you up when we do. And I said, wow, what an opportunity. This is so powerful. Now listen, if your favorite artist validates your music, you feel already instantly joyful. I just printed out that email that she had responded back, and I printed it out and kept it near my drums, and I felt happy. I felt good. And I also kind of had this realization in the moment that sometimes we don't have to compete in the red ocean and participate in things that may not be good for us or healthy for us. And instead, what if we create our own lanes and think about what we can contribute to the moment? So that experience had happened, and I hadn't quite gotten pulled to do the drumming. I had been applying to business schools. I had mentioned that. And I ended up getting into business school. I got into Harvard in 2013. So I was getting ready to move out to Boston to start my grad school. And right at that time, M.I.A.'s team hit me back and said, okay, yes, we want to do the tour. But the dates were exactly during my first semester at school. And so I remember thinking, my goodness, this is like an atomic clusterfuck. Like all the things that I could have wanted, are happening at the same time. Influencing music by being the female drummer on an all-female project, touring the world with my favorite artist, or influencing the music business and going to a prestigious school. Harvard is albeit the breeding ground of the capitalist patriarchy, okay? Let's just call a spade a spade. Yeah, let's just call a spade for this moment. But I did think, what about fighting fire with fire? What about understanding those tools so at least I can decide what's healthy and what isn't? So I remember thinking, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And folks would tell me, no, definitely do M.I.A. No, definitely do business school. I did not include my Indian parents in this decision-making process. But I thought, what if I could do both? What if I could do both? And that was precisely what I did. So I would go to class in the morning, and then in the evenings on a Friday or whatever, go and tour. And it was extraordinary. It would be in Chile, in Argentina, in countries I had never dreamed of going. I played at the Danforth Music Hall here in Toronto. Second show I ever played. And I was happy. I was joyful because I felt that I was educating my mind. I don't even want to say educating. I was seeing something new, okay, at this business school. I was seeing something new. And I was also performing at my best. And I felt in flow. And I had this thought, like, sometimes we don't have to accept paradigms as they are, that we do have the ability to reshape them. We oftentimes assume our own powerlessness, but rarely our own power. And it's been really powerful since then because so many other students who are now musicians who are applying to business school hit me up and they say, you're the only one I could find. And there's very few folks who are trying to do both. So how did you do that? And that felt really good for me. That felt good to have taken a leap and had it work out. In my second year of business school, though, I had a bit of an imposter syndrome. Do you know this saying, this feeling? I definitely felt a bit like I didn't belong or I didn't deserve the seat or things like that, And I had missed kind of the feeling of my educators and the teachers that I had growing up who definitely I wanted to get A's to make them happy. They had always taken a personal investment in me as a student. But I didn't quite feel that with the educators at this school. I didn't feel they had a personal investment. So I felt a little bit lonely my second year, and I felt this imposter syndrome, and I wanted to feel that sense of personal power again. I wanted to feel that sense of personal power again. And just like every time I come to Canada and I freeze my ass off and I see all of y'all like in t-shirts and stuff, I had this same experience in Boston. I used to see the runners on the Charles in the snow, in the hail, in the ice rain, just running so free with no problem in the world. And that inspired me. That moment inspired me. And so I decided to run my ass off. Okay, I decided to run my ass off. And I began doing it 2-3 times a week. And I did this because I felt like if you can run 1 mile, if you can run 3 miles, if you can run 5 miles, it's an honest accomplishment. No one can denigrate or take that away from you. There was something pure about the accomplishment, and I loved that. I used to start small, by the way. That's the best thing I can advise for anything. I used to start small, and I used to not tell anybody. I used to say, listen, can I run from here to there? Worst comes to worst, I'll Uber myself home. No one needs to know. And people get real competitive. People get real competitive. No one needs to know. Over time, over that year, my second year, as I was wrapping up my time at school, I got better and better at running and more consistent with it. And it built my confidence and my self-power back up again. And it felt good to invest in my own skill sets and invest in my own joyfulness. I got ready and somehow convinced by a dear friend to go and run the London Marathon. In 2015, I arrived at the London Marathon course, the start line. And I realized I was about to be on day 1 of my cycle. Now, for anyone in the room who's never experienced a period, let me tell you what you're not trying to do on day 1 of your cycle, okay? It's run 26 miles, 42 kilometers. So, like any of us who have been caught unprepared on our cycle, I started evaluating my options, okay? Toilet paper quick fix? No, not gonna work for that long of a time. A pad? No, chafing is a real issue on the marathon course. Any marathon runners? Any runners in the room? Yeah, make some noise. Amazing, amazing. We'll have to talk about tactics after, but at the time, there was not much online. A tampon, I guess so. I mean, I didn't really want like a half in, half out situation while I was trying to run for 4 hours. It just didn't seem like the right choice for me. I didn't have a moon cup or a menstrual cup on me at the time. So I decided to just take a little Midol for the pain, bleed freely, and just run. And for me, bleeding from anywhere running 26 miles, if you ask me, is a punk rock move, okay? Like, it's on some M.I.A. type shit. I was definitely on my feminist type shit. Like, I can do anything. I can do anything you can do bleeding. That was the kind of vibe that I was on. And the more I ran, the more I felt amazing. I was like, this is badass. And I was thinking about it. I was like, we never talk about this. Like, women and folks who bleed all around the world are doing incredible things. And not only are we not allowed to talk about it and celebrate it, we have to hide it away in shame and act like it's not even happening. And as you know, you have a long time to think on a marathon course. So I was really processing all of this. Yeah. And while I was in a position of privilege to choose to run in the way that was best for my body that day, I was very aware that millions of women and girls and femmes who bleed all around the world are not in that same privilege. And I thought, wow, stigma, this menstrual stigma and stigma in general, is one of the most effective forms of oppression because it denies us the ability to talk comfortably and confidently about what our bodies are doing. And in that moment, moreover, I learned, wow, sometimes what's not being said can be just as harmful as what is being said. And what are the conversations in all of our different communities that are not being had? This was really the question. When I crossed the finish line, I wrote about this experience. And I also wrote about this issue, about how it's facing different folks in different communities. And the story went viral. The story went viral. And overnight, it was very funny because I was being interviewed by all these big publications, even though my intention was just to educate my own Facebook audience. It got like 82 likes in the beginning. It was a great post. And then it just went. And it was an interesting moment because I had to answer and sort of step into my own personal power, answering all these questions about menstruation that I had never even talked and thought about before. In that moment, and during those weeks to follow, I learned what it means to be an ally. I learned the true definition of allyship because all of the spotlight was on me to speak about these issues. And I had to very rapidly understand, process, and talk about the experiences of homeless women who don't have access to the products they need, about incarcerated women who don't have access to the products they need, about members of the trans community who are not even comfortable being able to talk about what their bodies are doing and what their anatomies are doing. I had to learn about how different solutions, like sending a bunch of tampons out to India, might not be the best culturally relevant solution for women who don't feel comfortable wearing tampons given their religious context. For me, being an ally is about having deep, rich empathy and bravery to understand somebody else's walk of life so that you can be a voice when they may not have a voice. And there's so much power and richness in that can be dialed in on such a micro level because my intention that day was not to be the free bleeding runner, okay? My intention that day was simply to make it out alive on the other side of a marathon course, and not pass out on the way. This was the goal. But sometimes the smallest acts of bravery on the most micro level, in you standing up for yourself in your body, you might be able to stand up for somebody else and their body. Does that make sense? Now, something very interesting happened in the months to follow the marathon story. And I had just graduated business school. I was trying to get a job at Spotify or something. You know, I was on that path, but that was no longer. I was on this feminist journey. And many folks were sending me all types of beautiful gifts. Lots of feminist slogans, you know, T-shirts and like swag, buttons. The feminist community loves buttons. Buttons for days. So many buttons. So many pins. That's like our thing. But listen, I would receive so many T-shirts, and I would look at many of them. And even though feminism and women's studies and understanding gender is very central to my core, I didn't connect with many of them. Maybe they felt an anger that I didn't necessarily share. Maybe they lacked a sort of positivity that I was yearning for. One person, though, sent me this T-shirt. The future is female. The future is female. That was the first time that I'd ever seen this slogan, even though its roots are from the 1970s, a very famous photo that went viral in the 1970s women's movement. And when I saw this slogan, I connected with it. And I think I connected with it because it made femininity something aspirational, as opposed to something that's constantly trying to catch up to what the men are doing. So many times in my work, folks ask me, Kiran, how do we get more women in hip-hop? How do we get more women CEOs? I'm like, listen, I'm not even trying to go where the men are going, okay? I'm not even trying to go where the men are going because those paradigms and those power structures are created by men for men with the intention of masculine styles of leadership to allow for success. And whenever I would be in those spaces, especially a place like Georgetown where I did my undergrad or Harvard Business School where I did my grad school, I felt often that I would almost have to perform masculinity in order to be accepted. Whereas instead, I was like, I don't want to be someone who's participating in these systems that don't work for me. To me, the future is female is about valuing emotional intelligence over brute force aggression, like 45 is in the White House right now. It's about speaking with logic and calm confidence and love energy. Not feeling that you have to raise your voice in order to be heard. It's about being collaborative instead of competitive. It's about assuming that actually a hierarchy is not the only way that things can be done. And perhaps, as Gloria Steinem so astutely put it, we are linked and not ranked. Now, many people don't like the phrase, the future is female. You know, they take it very literally. You know, well, what about men? Yeah, we love you, we gave birth to you. You know, we get it. You know, it's like when they say, save the dolphins. Doesn't mean kill the whales. It's like when we say Black Lives Matter, and they come at us with all lives matter. But all lives are not being attacked, gunned down, and mass incarcerated in the world the way Black and brown lives are. So we have to remind you until that's no longer necessary. And so for me, the future is female is valuing femininity, no matter what your gender identity is. And while many folks do feel that it has a trans misogynist root, by which it's excluding members of the trans community, I find it ironic because it's really trans women and trans femmes who have made femininity something that's desirable, something that makes us all want to step into our femme, and that has allowed a phrase like the future is female to even resonate the way it has. In the past couple years, I've been producing and writing my own music that tackles many of these issues. I do love speaking and I do love playing the drums. And I wanted to combine those missions so that I would never lose steam, lose fuel. I was like, I'll always be playing the drums, so let's make it productive, you know. We're in this fourth wave of feminism now. It's very powerful. We're in this fourth wave of feminism now. And to me, there's two kind of main bullet points, if you will. The first is this notion that I described. This notion of femininity as something being desirable, leading from that energy, no matter what your gender identity is. There are many men and many male educators in my life who actually led from their femme that allowed me to connect with them and thrive. It's about being intersectional. It's about understanding that we're not single identity folks in the same way many of the shirts this evening are being worn from the Audre Lorde quote. It's about understanding that, in my opinion, the futurist female understands that ageism has no role in this world, that ableism has no role in this world, that fat phobia has no role in this world, that transphobia has got to go, that the racism has got to go, that LGBTQ members of our world are the most liberated folks there are. And the other aspect of this fourth wave of feminism that we're in right now that's very interesting to me is the introduction of social media into the landscape today. Can I ask you a learning question? Actually, I wasn't planning on doing this, but like, are 11-year-olds doing Instagram? Like, is that a thing? Yeah. Oh God. Wow. Okay. How early do they start doing that? 8? Oh my goodness. How do you deal with that? We don't. Too much to deal with. The interesting thing about social media that I was analyzing is that there is such a blessing because the young folks do have access to information and to models of positivity in a way that wasn't there before. They can hashtag LGBT, they can hashtag trans communities, and they can find safety online and communities that are validating their identity in a way that wasn't there before. So even someone who might physically live in a location where they're not feeling safe, there is an online community that allows them to do that. Black Lives Matter was one of those effective movements that mapped the online community into the real world to take to the streets and create visible change. The Women's March saw this power and drew and learned from the Black Lives Matter movement. And the Women's March of 2017, following the 45 election, was the largest single-day march in the history of the planet because of the effective use of social media. Moreover, the internet and social media and Instagram culture, Twitter culture, is allowing us to have direct control and influence over the folks we want to. In the 1920s, when the women were trying to get the vote, they had to depend on male journalists to tell their story for them. They had to beg and hope that they wouldn't be made of a mockery, that if they did the interview, it would be honest. Riot girls in the 1990s had such a tough time being taken seriously by rock and roll press when they would go and sign up for interviews. They would think they were going to be honored and told their stories seriously, and instead the journalists and the news reporters would make fun of them. Today, we get to control our own media and tell that story directly. It's how my marathon story was told from my perspective as opposed to somebody else covering it. And even the folks who got it wrong, it didn't matter. It was instantly discredited because my original post in my words were there. It's very, very, very powerful that we can control our own narrative. It's very much the reason also why I produce my own music. In the music community, we have to be so dependent on other folks to make the music for us. I don't like that. In the music world, we have 98% of folks who are producing are men. That means only 2% of the folks are women who are telling our stories. So investing in our own skill sets is part of the work, and owning our own narrative is part of this fourth wave of feminism that we're in. I'd like to wrap by saying a really sincere thank you. A really sincere thank you for your work, for dealing with limited resources, for dealing with bratty kids, for dealing with kids who don't understand how powerful it is, the work that you're doing, for dealing with parents who might not be present at all, who might be a little too present. Thank you so, so much for your work, for your leadership, and for molding the youth. You have so much power to instill their joy, to instill their freedom, to instill their confidence and belief that they can make a difference in the world. I'd like to open it up for questions, and I'd like to say namaste and thank you one more time. And besides questions, I think even open comments, anything that you'd like to share with each other is very fitting. We'll do that for a couple of moments, and then I'd like to play a couple more songs for you before we conclude this evening. Yes. I'll repeat the question till then.
I actually commented on, I saw your article, and shortly after you did that run, there was a story that went out about a man who went to the washroom in his pants, number 2. Yes. And I noticed there was a lot of media circling your story from a negative point of view. Yes. When his story came out, he was regarded as a hero. And I remember thinking, I made a post about it, and I said, I don't understand how it's acceptable for him, something that's in his control as far as I'm concerned. You can't hold your, that's acceptable, but something that naturally occurs in our bodies was seen as something so negative. And I didn't realize that was you that was here today. And I just wanted to share that. I just thought it was very contradictory to, he was literally talked about as being a hero for finishing that marathon. And people were speaking quite negatively about your story when it's totally out of your control, right? So
this is rock and roll is what
right?
it is.
Like,
rock and roll.
You ran that marathon bleeding, and
we as women
you go,
are
girl.
Amazing. You as well, sis, and thank you for your work, and thank you for being here. And I'd like to address 2 aspects of what is your pronoun she, hers? Yes, she. I would like to address 2 aspects of what she brought up, which was, yes, when my story went viral, it was very interesting. The thing that kept happening was, that's so gross, that's so disgusting, that's so disgusting. And if we just tackle that at face value, it wasn't like I just did some laundry, it was super straightforward. My blood didn't come in contact with anybody, so that wasn't even, that's sort of a masked misogyny, it's a masked misogyny. But this notion of, they did number 2, what if a guy did number 2, or if a guy ejaculated, we wouldn't love that. And actually people didn't, when they were shaming my marathon, they actually were saying it would be gross if a guy ejaculated, or wouldn't it be gross if a guy defecated. So I was actually hearing the parallel being that's so gross, it's not like it's a feminist thing. If men did gross things, we would call it gross too. They were trying to say that. First of all, with that, I was trying to say, listen, a man having an ejaculation, the parallel of that is a woman having an orgasm, okay? The parallel is not, menstruation. A man using the bathroom while he's running, the parallel of that is a woman using the bathroom while she's running. So right from the get-go, the misogyny is so clear that in order to understand women in this society, we have to masculinize them. We had to create this male parallel in order to legitimize it and to understand it. And that's what revealed to me even more so how much work there is left to do. And that's where the stigma comes in. Because we don't talk enough about it, we have to masculinize in order to understand it. And so that was the sort of first thing that I started responding to, and just saying, listen, menstruation and the female reproductive system and the fact that we give birth to you is fucking amazing. And that's all there is. There's no male parallel. It's just its own thing. It's just its own thing. So we have to be brave enough to reaffirm that for ourselves. We have to be brave enough. The second thing I wanted to say about bleeding, and I think my personal reason as to why I think it is so shamed, at least in the Western context, I don't even want to go into religion and Eastern context, but where I grew up in New York City, I think it's shamed because we as women, unfortunately, are still valued for our looks and for our sexuality, whereas the men and the male-identifying folks get to be valued for their skill set. And that's a capitalist paradigm, where the men get to go and make all the money and then the women are supposed to look pretty. It's a very retro thing. And so a period is not a sexually consumable thing. We're supposed to hide it away in the same way we're supposed to shave our legs and almost pretend like we're younger than we actually are. I'm 30, I can't wait, let's go. We have to own that. So I think for me, it was about combating the misogyny and the assumption that we are just supposed to be here to be sexually consumable at all times, to be beautiful at all times, to hide away our pain and things that are not sexy in order to be beautiful for you. And to actually, the fact that we are assumed to prioritize other people's comfort over our own comfort, that was the other baffling thing. The fact that we're supposed to hide away something and pretend like it doesn't exist, or quiet our voices so that we don't shame or embarrass somebody else. It's like, we're the ones in pain, damn. Like, and now on top of that, we're supposed to be quiet to accommodate your comfort and not disgust you. No, enough is enough. So those are my thoughts on that parallel, and thank you for asking that question. Are there any other questions? I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see the hands. Please, own your voice. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's power. Like, if there's one thing you took away from the talk, it's like, own your voice and step into your power.
I'm over here.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, you said you worked with Lady Gaga, so what do you like? I see her on, she's always done Made Up, so maybe I'm kind of judging her from this audience, view, and I'm not really sure what she would be like in person, but I would definitely, be curious.
That's so sweet. Lady Gaga. What is Lady Gaga like? She is, in the meetings, she comes in very put together, but not over the top. Like, there's no meat suits when she comes to the label. So she does look great. She's not like in sweatpants or anything like that. She's made up. She looks put together. It's a beautiful outfit. She lets her representatives speak for her until there's something that's very artfully intensive. And she'll say, no, I don't want the website to have that because everything needs to be black. Or I don't want the band to be 9-piece. I actually want to go with 15-piece because we're going to have a big stage. She's very focused on artistic direction. She's soft-spoken when she knows she wants her team to lead. And she asserts herself when it's completely related to the art. And so that vision has to come from her. And I honestly do think that's a very effective sort of collaboration style, where you're not in the way of those folks who are trying to help you, and you're simultaneously confident in your own light and your own artistry and what it is that you want to contribute. So that was sort of my experience with her, and then every time I've seen her perform, she's an artist who's always trying to get better and better and better. Even at the Grammys this year, she took it to a whole other level, which I think is hard in the music industry to last that long. So I would say stamina and excellent leadership skills.
Awesome, thank you. And I think you're amazing as well, obviously, and thank you very much. That was awesome.
We'll bring the mic in. Zoe, I'm going to bring the mic.
Oh, good.
Just
I really
in
wanted
case.
to meet you, so that's cool. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Hey. Yeah, oh, I would be so lucky.
I want to know what's next for you. You and I are the same age. And I'm really proud of you, but I want to know what you're excited about.
That's so loving. That's so thoughtful. Wow, are you a Pisces as well? Like, so loving.
A full-blown Leo.
Leo, amazing. So thoughtful. What's next? I think for me, these past 4 years were really interesting because I would travel a lot to speak and perform. And while some of my ideas are in my music, I would really like to put out a fuller, longer body of work, musical record, that fully dives into each of these ideas that I have about this fourth wave of feminism that we're in. I think I would feel great to take these ideas and write them into lyrics, even more so, the next record. But it's interesting because it's hard, because feminism is kind of heady, it's very intellectual, and I don't know if people want to turn up to that. So I think for me, the current challenge is improving my producer skills and improving the way that I communicate these issues so that they're accessible to everybody, and write my next record. That's what's next.
We have a couple more over here.
Hi, my name is Patrice, and I'm a Cancer.
Amazing. I love this already. I'm so happy you just did that. Made my day.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you. It was great. It was really great. Very informative. It was inspiring, encouraging, the whole lot. And it's funny because I keep laughing about it, and I keep saying to Nadia, I have to get up and tell her that she's my best friend now. Because you actually put a name to something that has really been on my mind, and I've been thinking about and just reviewing, and that is fat phobia. And I've never heard anyone give it a name, and you gave it a name, and it is such a real thing, especially for us women. As women and outside of being women. And so I just want to thank you. It was so informative. You put names to a whole bunch of stuff that I couldn't even give names to. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I just got goosebumps when you said that. That's awesome. Thank you for being vulnerable to say that.
Hi there. I'm Marcy, Scorpio.
Water signs. Water signs. We flowing. We flowing.
Awesome. We just wanted to tell you, our table, I'm sure every table, that you're awesome and we loved you. And we were wondering how we could get the music that you do have out, how we can access it. We'd love to have it. I'd actually like to play it for my students. They're going to love that Top Nut song. They're going to, so.
It just made me so
and thank
emotional.
You again.
That was so nice. Thank you. This is such a supportive room. My goodness, I love women so much. I just want to hang out with women all the time. That's really kind. I brought a couple of CDs to autograph and that I'm selling at the end of the night. So that's very generous of you to ask. I'll just stand to the left and I will sign them and sell them. And I have a bunch of stickers for you all as well. And online, my music is on Spotify. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple Music. Madame Gandhi. Madame Gandhi. Madame Gandhi. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you for sharing your story. If you could go back and give your 8 or 13-year-old self some advice or some insight, whether it's from what you've learned now or what you'll be learning in the future, what would that be?
Is it okay if I answer the question the opposite, the reverse? Because I've been reflecting a lot. I love to journal. And I was thinking at 8 and at 13, to be honest, I felt more free. I did. I felt more free. I would be so joyful and free as a kid. I would dance. I would build Lego. I would make like robots. You know, I felt so liberated. And I think even though I know many of my own liberation politics, I also live on this earth. And I do feel burdened at times by things like, oh, am I financially sustainable? Am I beautiful enough? Am I talented enough? Am I deserving enough? You know, all these different things that we face on a very real level day to day. And so if I could allow my 8-year-old and 13-year-old self to give me advice and to remind me, she would say, you're good. Like, you are the best, you know? Like, you're free. Like, do whatever. You're good. Dance. Be joyful. Nap. Like, be free. So, if it's okay, I'd like to flip that question and say there's so much the youth can really teach us.
Hi, I'm Amanda. Aries, so fire, water, we'll see how that goes. I just want to say thank you so much for all that you've said. I've found it really inspiring. As a newer teacher myself in my first few years of my career, I'm just wondering, and I'm sure many of the women here tonight are as well, did you have any teachers that truly inspired you, set you on your path to self-empowerment and to recognize yourself? And I guess kind of what things did they really do to help you?
Thank you for asking that question. It was Miss Olson. Miss Olson, 7th grade science teacher. I know that's a little bit older than the elementary school group here, but is it not? 7th grade is still Oh, great. Perfect. 7th grade. 7th grade science teacher, Miss Olson. And as a 6th grader, I had transferred schools. I had just come into this school in New York City. And I didn't mention earlier, but we lived in Mumbai, India for a couple years. So I had gone to school in India. I came back to New York City. It was a private school. It was very bougie. And I was very bullied as a kid. I was very bullied as a 6th grader. I didn't fit in. I was always trying to like buy the stuff that I needed to look cool or whatever, and it was a really tough year. And it was my 7th grade year that I got into her class, and immediately she was a Cancer, you know, Cancer Pisces, amazing. And she was just so, she had this really positive mixture of just telling us the truth, like as kids. She just like said it as it was. So she was always the cool teacher because she was just saying cool things. Like she would talk about if she went on a date the weekend before, and we're like, oh my God, like what? You know, it was so cool. It was so real. It was so real. And I felt really seen. I felt really seen by her. And so I would always visit her after school. I would always like make her little gifts. I would always say thank you. Like I was such a teacher's pet. But she made me feel so happy and so seen that it didn't matter all of the bullies. And it really did build up my self-confidence. And I would say the two really effective things that she did, besides just making time for me, which I know is a rare resource, but it was two things. It was one, it was telling the truth. Because now more than ever, the kids are seeing everything. So they can kind of intuitively detect what's bullshit and what's like for kids versus a teacher who's treating them like they're an adult, you know, and this is the truth. That felt really good. That made me trust her as a teacher and want to open up. And the second really effective thing that she did was she did make us each feel seen. You know, she knew our names. She made us feel seen. She would make kind of loving fun of us a little bit. She'd be like, oh, yeah, you know, I know you like to match your outfits. Or like, I know you didn't study for that. Like, you know, and it kind of created this energy that we were seen. So to this day, you know, she was almost going to come for my birthday tomorrow. You know, we're that in touch. But to this day, she's definitely someone who has shaped my life and shaped my career and built my confidence at that time. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Okay, I'm going over here and then over there.
Kiran, thank you. Just so inspired by your presentation. And for me, I guess, what's a challenge that you had to overcome? You're enthusiastic, energetic, ready to continue to take on the world. We're here at a conference to rise further. Share, if you can, a time where maybe you were discouraged and how you were able to overcome that. Because I think women are here at different perspectives and a different trajectory of the leadership. And what you can maybe expand on that.
That's a great question. I think the one that comes to mind immediately was being in the business school classroom. And I think it was because the masculine energy was so heightened in that space. And I had come in thinking I was very confident. I felt like I'm a performer. I'm comfortable on stages. You know, you're 90 people in a classroom. It's all based on your participation. You're supposed to raise your hand a lot. But I didn't know it was a culture where people were supposed to cut each other off, or that you can't repeat the comment that might have been said before, or that people are going to push back pretty aggressively, you know, and attach almost emotion to it. And I rarely felt safe in that classroom. And safe not physically, unsafe not unsafe physically, but unsafe psychologically, where I didn't feel comfortable. Like I didn't feel like I was like flowing and like sharing my opinion and learning. I didn't feel that way. I felt like to raise my hand and say something was like so much anxiety that it didn't feel joyful. And I didn't feel like I was my best self. I mean, I was doing the tour the first year, so it was a lot, but I didn't feel like I was thriving. I felt like I was quieted. I remember we even had a group project. It was 4 cis white male students, me and then another international student from Beijing, and she was a little bit quieter. And I remember feeling, we had gone to Turkey. Sorry, I don't want to go on and on. Quickly, I'll just share. We had gone to Turkey for this experience. We were supposed to do a consulting project for the airport in Turkey. It was a very cool project. They send students all around the world. But the way that these 4 boys, I don't want to call them boys, like 25-year-olds, you don't know anything. Like, be self-aware, you know, you don't know anything. So it's like 25-year-olds, they were talking so rudely about the Turkish partners who we were working with. Very disrespectful internally. They would kiss ass to them, but internally, these kids don't know these guys don't know what they're talking about. You know, we got this. This is so easy. Like, we can finish this. And I didn't like that energy. I was like, this is so disrespectful. Like, how could you possibly think that way? You don't know anything. Like, and I just felt really unsafe and unseen. And so I don't know if I overcame that space. It was kind of the bully syndrome where you feel quieted and then you think of the 45 things you can say to them later, you know? But I would say the way I overcame it was kind of thinking of a Justice Ginsburg solution. Has anybody seen the Ginsburg, what is it called? The Notorious, On the Basis of Sex, Notorious RBG. It's just the documentary about our female Supreme Court Justice. She talks a lot about using calm confidence, love, and logic when you're explaining things. And that really has been my mission since feeling what it feels like to have my voice quieted. to explain things and to respond, not with anger or from that emotion, but instead to process my emotions and then turn them into something that I can respond with logic. No one can unravel logic. No one can raise their voice over logic. And so I would say that's how I've learned from that experience. It created a lot of empathy for me to want to be better.
Hi. Thanks so much. You've spoken about so many things that have spoken to so many of us in different ways. And there was something that you said that I just really wanted to ask you about because it's got me thinking. You mentioned being in Harvard and not wanting to exist in the male power structures that perpetuate themselves, that value masculine skills. And we're in a time where femininity is beginning to be respected and recognized, and how we have our strengths and our leadership skills as women, but having grown and lived and existed in a space where the male traits are valued, we've developed them, we exist in them. How do we create spaces where we can exist using those skills that we bring to the table, rather than just creating the masculine spaces and perpetuating them ourselves because we've grown up with them and learnt them?
I think about this question a lot, and I don't want my answer to be too radical, but it's kind of where I've arrived these days. And I do think we need both. We need all types of feminists. We need all types of change. We need folks who are the sort of ball-busting CEO type, the women, the Hillary Clintons of the world, in those male-dominated spaces, playing by male values, but then once they have those positions of power, influencing from the top down. A great example is the Justice Ginsburg example, being on the Supreme Court. But honestly, I'm in this space right now where I'm just so much more interested in us as women and as femmes going to start our own thing. I really am. In the past 4 years alone, just looking at the menstrual health and hygiene space, and we can also look at the music space, the amount of innovation that has gone up, and women entrepreneurs who are taking in control this problem and the problem solving for the menstrual care movement is so profound. You know that before that, in the past 500 years, the only innovation related to women's cycles were a pad, a tampon, and a cup, and they were all invented by men. And so knowing that women are now saying, hey, I want to start my own company, and not only that, I want to embody values in the company that change the paradigm, policies that are more friendly to parenting and to co-parenting, policies that allow for pregnancy in a way that, at least in the U.S., most corporations are like 2 weeks or something absurd, for parenting. So when women do take in the leadership roles and are not only innovating solutions publicly facing, but then are designing their companies in a way that are embodying these skill sets and these values, I think that's how you have the change. Even in this conference, I thought it was so beautiful that we had these sort of, not necessarily even rules, but just like setting the culture, setting the tone. That's what these are the things we're going to value in this space together. I thought that was something powerful you don't see in mainstream conferences. So I'm interested in us starting our own thing and mixing it up. Yeah. Music, rock and roll. Thank you all so much. Thank you. If there's anything else that I can answer, just send it my way, Madame Gandhi. Instagram, Madame Gandhi, and we'll party afterwards. And any local Toronto folks, let me know where we're going to celebrate my birthday tonight. Please talk to me after the show. I'm going to do 2 songs before we wrap. Check. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Listen. I heard Amy Poehler speak at the White House. Her words hit me hard like a light bulb. Fictitious depictions of girls must die out. If we want to live in world that triumphs. I am just talking about loving the femme. I ain't talking about nobody else. Toxic masculinity has to end. I'm just talking about loving ourselves. You can't catch me singing these words in a yellow, other wild, futurist female t-shirt like, hey, me, I got something to say. Gender construction just get in the way. I've been playing drums since I was like 8. The future is female, the future is great. How y'all doing, ETFO? Make some noise. The future is female. Yeah. The future is all y'all.
Don't be afraid, there's power in what you say. In what you say, own your voice, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
How y'all doing? Y'all still with me? How could girly ever be an insult? All the women I know are ones moving culture. What would happen if we all would leave with a little less aggression, more femininity? We have to value girls more than our looks. The biggest threat is a girl with a book. The system is making for all that we do. We've been bleeding each month till we gave birth to you. To me, the future is female means that no longer will female qualities be subordinated to male qualities. I want to live in a world that is collaborative, a world that is emotionally intelligent, a world in which we are linked and not ranked. Make some noise.
The future is female.
Yeah. Is it loud enough out there?
The future is female.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all can move in your seats. Y'all can move in your seats. Yeah, I see you, sis. I see you, sis. Yeah. The future is you.
There's power in what you say. In what you say. Own your voice, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's power in what you say. In what you say. Own your voice, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. The future is female. The future is female.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, bring it back.
The future is female. The future is female.
Last one, sing it with me.
The future is female.
Thank you. Will you stand up? 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 As we bring in this joyful evening to a conclusion together. This is my last one. It's called Bad Habits. Sticka, shika, sha. It's about being the best version of yourself. I see.
I have run out of time. I had to lost my mind. I have run out of time. I had to lost my mind. I didn't know. I didn't know. I've been so pressed that I don't even know what's bothering me. All my bad habits have got to go entirely. It's my year to be free.
Hey,
from what's bothering me. It's this society that's killing me. All my bad habits have got to go. All my bad habits have got to go. All my bad habits have got to go. All my bad habits have got to go.
shining light. Digga, twist, twist, twist. Digga, twist, turn. Digga, all of y'all, turn in position with me. Come on, let's move. Get that blood flowing. Such a pleasure to be here with you this evening. And in a moment, clap with me.
Now listen, eloquency in the 1970s inspires me. All he wanted was his people to be free. 40s. I've been reading about women's history in the 1920s, thinking about how I can be so much better.
Can I get you three up on the stage with me, please?
Thinking about how the tears I cried.
I see you.
Thinking about how we can be so much better.
Karen, can I get you up?
Thinking about
where's she at? My glasses are on. Yes. Make some noise for our designated dancer. Let's get the folks who helped organize the conference on the room. Make some noise. Y'all look so good.
All my bad habits have got to go. All my bad habits have got to go. All my bad habits have got to go.
Like being late for everything.
All my bad habits have got to go.
Like the parking tickets I keep getting.
All my bad habits have got to go.
Like the hangover I'll have tomorrow.
All my bad habits have got to go.
ETFO, Teachers of Canada, thank you so very much. Should we take a bow? All of y'all put a song together. On the count of 3, Broadway style, 1, 2, 3. My name is Kiran, Madame Gandhi. I'll just be to the left with those CDs. Thank you so much. Good night.
Wow, that was absolutely fabulous. You're absolutely right, Kiran. The future is absolutely female. And what better way to celebrate that as we have tonight? I want to thank you for actually verbalizing things that I, as a young woman, many years ago, thought about but didn't have the words to say. So thank you for actually speaking that truth. I really, really meant a lot. So thank you. So I think that's it for the evening. Go out and enjoy. And forgot to say happy birthday, Kiran. Enjoy your evening.